First, welcome and thank you for your interest in my instructional design plan, implementing Mentimeter to improve student engagement in the Synchronous online course, Interdisciplinary 105, Prior Learning Portfolio Development. I'm Sean Carey, Associate Dean of Career Programs at Wilbur Wright College, and the course designer and instructor for Interdisciplinary 105. The City Colleges of Chicago is a district of 7 independently accredited colleges that offer credit for prior learning options, allowing students, especially adult learners, to earn college credit for prior experience. One of these courses, Interdisciplinary 105, Prior Learning Portfolio Development, taught synchronously online, aims to prepare students for creating their portfolios. However, online learning poses challenges such as decreased student engagement, particularly for adult learners who prefer interaction, and learning communities. This performance gap has garnered significant research interest, exploring factors like satisfaction, engagement, motivation, social connection, and learner attitudes in online courses. To address this performance gap of decreased engagement in online courses, I will implement an interactive presentation software, specifically Mentimeter, into the weekly synchronous online meetings. In the following, I will review the major components of this instructional design plan, which includes the analysis, design strategy, development plan, implementation timeline, evaluation plan, and maintenance plan. As previously noted, the City College of Chicago offers a number of options for credit for prior learning. Essentially, that's the process for students to apply experiential and previous learning to petition for college credit. There's a number of forms that this takes, for example, AP transfer credits, CLEP tests, International Baccalaureate, DSST tests, some other standardized exams, the submission of industry or recognized certifications, and portfolios. The portfolio course was created by me to guide students in successfully creating and successfully submitting these portfolios. For example, in the past, students had a lot of trouble putting the materials together in a way that was compelling enough and rigorous enough that when evaluated by an assessor, they would be able to earn credit. So to increase the use of credit for prior learning and to increase the successful evaluation of those portfolios for college credit, that's why that course was designed. And this course and the CPL process is overall aligned with strategic goals at Wright College specifically and at the City College of Chicago district. And in designing this course, it was modeled after similar courses, a review of about a dozen similar classes at 2- and 4-year colleges and universities in the region and across the country. I'd like to tell you a little bit about our college and the students at Wilbur Wright College. So Wilbur Wright College is a 2-year public community college in Chicago. We're part of the City College of Chicago, again, one of 7 colleges in the district. It's notable that CCC is the largest community college district in Illinois and one of the largest in the entire country. Wright specifically serves about 12,000 students annually. We're a designated, recognized Hispanic serving institution. We recently were awarded the Seal of Excellencia, which only a few colleges and universities across the country have been awarded with. Let me tell you a little bit about the programs and the students. So we offer adult education, right? That's GED and ESL. We have continuing and sort of community education programs. Those are non-credit. Obviously, the majority of our students, there's about 8,000 annually that are in credit classes. Credit is split between essentially two pathways. One is a transfer pathway where students will earn a general Associate of Arts or maybe Associate of Science degree, for example. And then we have career and technical education programs. Those are also transferable to a 4-year, but many students will earn either an AAS, an Associate of Applied Science, or stackable credentials like a basic certificate along the way, and then go directly into the workforce. And career and technical education specifically aligns and is a really good fit with credit for prior learning, because we recognize that a lot of folks are coming back to school with some previous work experience. They're trying to upskill and reskill, and they may be able to apply those previous skills and learning towards college credit. Within the college, we talked a little bit about the population, we talked about the pathways. We do have a lot of traditional college age students that would be in the 18 to 22-year-old range. We also have a large, or an increasing number, I would say, of non-traditional students, also known as adult learners. Typically, a non-traditional student is defined as over 24 years old, financially independent. That likely means living on their own. They're often a caretaker or caregiver with taking care of family members, children, things like that. They often have a lot of previous work experience, maybe some previous college, and are coming back to complete a degree. Again, we recognize a growing number of adult learners across the college, but specifically in our career and technical ed programs. Some other characteristics about adult learners: they're autonomous, they are practical, they're goal-oriented, and they're results-oriented, right? And those align directly with the goals of credit for prior learning, right? We want to recognize people's previous experience. We want to save them time, we want to save them money, and we definitely want to use those to increase completion of a credential. So the goals of credit for prior learning, one of them was to increase more opportunities for students, and additionally with portfolio, increase the successful submission of portfolio and the translation of those portfolios to college credit. So that's why this course was designed by me in partnership with stakeholders across the college and across the City Colleges of Chicago district. So here is the course description out of the catalog, again written by me. So Interdisciplinary 105, Prior Learning Portfolio Development, introduces students to prior learning assessment and guides them through the process of developing a prior learning portfolio. Students will examine their experiential learning and relate it to college level learning. Through the portfolio process and the demonstration of learning equivalent to college level learning, students will be able to petition for course credits. Now let's look at the SLOs, right? The student learning outcomes of this course. So upon successful completion of this course, students will be able to identify career and educational goals, distinguish between college level academic learning and experiential learning, identify, evaluate, and document their personal learning outcomes, classify prior experiential learning that is equivalent to college level learning, articulate knowledge and skills gained from prior learning, recognize and identify student learning outcomes in particular disciplines and specific college courses that match their prior learning, and finally prepare and assemble a preliminary prior learning portfolio consisting of a cover sheet, statement of authenticity, petition for credits, statement of goals, learning chronology, narrative essay, and relative supporting documents. As addressed at the beginning of this presentation, the intervention and the instructional design plan was created to address the performance gap of decreased engagement in online courses. Let me preface that by saying this course, Interdisciplinary 105, was specifically scheduled to be delivered in the synchronous online format, often called online live or remote, where students meet on Zoom or some other teleconferencing software weekly at the same predetermined times, but instead of meeting face-to-face, they're meeting on Zoom, right? That was specifically done intentionally to open up this class opportunity to students not just at Wright College, but at all 7 city colleges of Chicago, as this is a brand new course and our credit for prior learning opportunities are underutilized. We're only offering this course out of Wright College, but again, to make it eligible and available for students at all 7 colleges, we offer it online live, typically in the evening, and it meets once a week. For example, currently I'm teaching the class. I have a few few students from my college, right? But I also have a student from one of our sister colleges in the district. So you'll notice that this performance gap, this decreased engagement, does not align with a specific learning outcome. So I'm not trying to intervene to improve one of those learning outcomes, but decreased engagement in online classes, right? It affects all student learning outcomes, right? It's inherent to the challenges that come with online teaching. And we can see this screenshot, which is a real screenshot that I found online of a teacher teaching on Zoom, and you can see all of the students in the class do not have their cameras on. Not that that's necessarily a requirement, but we know that that affects engagement, connection, sort of social cohesion, and a number of other factors. And then if you look at adult learners and the needs of them, we can see these issues amplified. Research has examined this performance gap, specifically decreased engagement among adult learners in online courses. And notable topics include satisfaction, engagement, motivation, social connection, and the attitude, right? So what happens when these students are in these courses? My proposed intervention of implementing, in this case, Mentimeter, what I'll also refer to as an interactive presentation software, into the online course aligns with research findings regarding adult learners and online courses. So a couple notable passages from research conducted. Online courses should include activity-based learning. It's important to consider how to provide a safe and welcoming environment that offers a range of opportunities for students to connect. Collaboration, real opportunities for online activities, the use of advanced technologies, effective instructor feedback, and positive relationships between participants and their colleagues and instructors were found to influence the participants' engagement levels. So in examining various platforms and software out there, I found Mentimeter, which we can see a screenshot right here of one of the poll features. I believe it fits a number of these criteria, being activity-based, being engaging, being collaborative, and being accessible, right? And we're going to talk a little bit more about the other benefits of implementing Mentimeter in a moment. In addition to the research about engagement and motivation in online courses, I wanted to design an intervention that addressed the principles that surround working with adult learners, and specifically the goals of credit for prior learning. So constructivism and constructivist principles do align with credit for prior learning. Specifically, constructivism is learner-centered, it's practical, and it's problem-based, right? So creating a prior learning portfolio also encompasses those. Additionally, constructivism aligns with the practice of andragogy, which, as opposed to pedagogy, the teaching of children, andragogy is the teaching of adults. And a couple of those principles specifically are: adult learners need to understand the rationale for learning something new before undertaking it. They have a self-concept of being responsible for making their own decisions. They bring a greater volume and different quality of life experience to learning than younger learners do. Their readiness to learn is oriented around real-life situations, and adult learners would like to take a life-centered problem approach to learning. In reviewing a number of different resources and platforms, I found Mentimeter, and I believe that it meets a number of my implementation criteria. Specifically, Mentimeter is free within a maximum number of monthly participants, so I'm able to try it out without incurring any additional costs. It's intuitive. It's really easy to use for both on the instructor side when you're creating these activities, and it's definitely very easy to use for the student. You can see a couple screenshots. So the larger image on the right would be a poll and you can see the results live. That would be people responding to these questions. The sample there is about live teaching. And then you can see the image of the phone. So students are able to participate via their phone. They're also able to just drop a link and do it on their browser. So it's really easy. And then you can see what it looks like on the user side on the phone. It's usually one or two questions at a time. And then you see instant feedback on the screen share, which would be projected on Zoom or some other software, right? When you're having your online class. It's browser based. So again, it runs in any web browser, so you can use it on a phone, you can use it on a computer, a PC, a Mac. So nothing needs to be installed or downloaded by anybody. Nothing needs to be added on to the learning management system like Brightspace or D2L. No add-ons for Zoom are even needed, right? Again, this is, you open up the Mentimeter website and then you share your screen, and essentially it's instantaneous and live. It's got a bunch of built-in features, so you can't just, it's not that you can just do one thing with it, just like polls or surveys. There's quizzes, word clouds, and there's a bunch of other ones. And then there's a bunch of pre-made ones, which are nice, that can be modified. It's very accessible. So again, I mentioned being able to use it on a phone or a computer. When folks are interacting with it though, too, for example, on the computer, you can use the mouse and click around. You can also type with the keyboard. So it addresses a bunch of accessibility issues that I'm concerned about when engaging with different learners. Lastly, or I mentioned this before, it's very easy to add on to Zoom. Additionally, you can integrate it with PowerPoint and other presentation software. And then interestingly enough, so all these quizzes, polls, surveys, all of those sorts of things, Mentimeter stores all of that feedback and response data. So I can go in, open up my data dashboard. I can look at the results of a quiz. Let's say I did a quiz, or let's say it was more of a knowledge check, a poll just to check the pulse of a previous reading material that the students did, right? I can look at the results. And in there, I can also look at additional data like the response time, how many folks were logged in but maybe didn't respond to every question. So the response rate would be another thing to look at in addition to the actual content. And again, in addition to just checking boxes, yes, no, quiz, survey style, students, there's open-ended questions and it'll save all that data. So it's very accessible and easy to implement essentially immediately. I talked about a few of these features in the previous slide, but for more specifics, when developing this plan, I had to consider stakeholders, right? So how would students access it? How would I be able to access it? Who else is needed? So as it's browser based, I won't have any trouble having the students install it or any issues with that. I don't need to install it. I don't need to involve the IT department, for example. I also don't need any approvals. Because there's a free version, I can try it immediately and implement it. Again, it's very intuitive. You can see a screenshot here of the word cloud feature. Again, it shows someone submitting on their phone, but you can do it through any sort of, you could do a phone or a computer, and then you would see that instant feedback. So it's nice for, like I said, quizzes and things like that, but you can also do sort of a pulse check and check the mood or the temperature of a class, maybe right after midterms or before an exam, and see how folks are doing. It's a nice way to up the energy level. I talked about the cost. Again, it is free. The downside of the free version is you have a maximum number of users per month, and that's 50. Right now in my class, Interdisciplinary 105, I don't have that many students. I have less than a dozen, and I'm only teaching one section at a time. So if I did, and we meet once a week, so if I did 4 activities a month, I would not exceed that 50 users. But if I were going to expand this to other sections of the class, if my class had, hopefully future sections will include more students, Or if I want to use this for other courses, or for example, here in my studies at Northern or in meetings, I would strongly consider subscribing to the paid version, which is $11.99 a month. Notably, there are additional features with the paid version. You can directly import PowerPoint slides and have them translated into Mentimeter, so you don't have to flip back between PowerPoint and then your Mentimeter screen when you're doing different presentations. It can all be one smooth, seamless presentation. There's also some better data analysis features, which I'll talk about later. And again, notably, if I was going to continue using this, which I think I will, in other courses as well as meetings, I will likely end up subscribing to the Pro version for $11.99 a month. So now I'd like to talk about how I am going to implement this, right? How is this going to be, the planning and the implementation of this going to go? So I have a breakdown here. Like most 2- and 4-year colleges and universities, the fall and summer semester are often a 16-week term. Not always, but there's that 4 months in the fall and 4 months in the spring, and then classes are delivered either 16 weeks or sometimes in shorter 8 or 12-week sections within that. But let's say this was going to start in fall 2024. So week 1, the start of the academic term, I would, these are the steps I would need to do. Well, first, the needs and problem analysis have already been created because I've done it for this intervention and instructional design plan. The task analysis, however, will need to be completed during week 1. Week 2 and 3, the objectives and resources have already been established, right? I know what I want to do, and I know that I'm going to use Mentimeter, and I know I don't need to involve additional stakeholders like IT or department approvals. But during this time, I would design the formative and the summative assessments. So what do I want to measure throughout the course? And then what do I want to measure at the end? And then weeks 3 and 4, I would make the specific activities. So again, I mentioned Mentimeter can capture all of that user response data. For the intervention, I want to track engagement, but the Mentimeter activities can also be used for content, right? So I can do a little mini quiz or a knowledge check or a pulse check regarding something we just reviewed or something we worked on that week or the previous week. So there's additional assessment I can get out of these tools as well. And then I mentioned the semester 16 weeks long. This specific class, the way I teach it, I offer it in a 12-week section because it's not that much content. So weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the fall semester, I would be doing this pre-work, and then week 5 would be when the course starts. Again, it's a 12-week course, and what I would do that very first course, I would do our first Mentimeter activity. I'm calling it an icebreaker, so it would be more just a way to get students to use Mentimeter, to get familiar with the features, how it works, and to sort of set the tone of how the weekly courses will go, and that we'll be using this engagement tool or interactive presentation software, as Mentimeter calls it. We'll be using this weekly throughout the term, but it'll be a nice way to troubleshoot and see if anybody has any difficulty using or accessing Mentimeter from their phone, computer, or other device. Weeks 6 through 15 would be those formative evaluations, which I talked about. So I would be measuring a number of factors, including engagement, but I will also be able to build in other assessments, and it's a nice tool to be able to capture all that data as well. So they'll be included in every class meeting. And then final class of the semester, that 16th week of the term, will be the 12th week of this class specifically. I'll include a summative assessment specifically related to engagement, and it's going to have some attitudinal and student satisfaction questions. Likely have the students rank all of the different types of activities we did throughout the term. So lecture, breakout room, Mentimeter, and I would probably break that into different categories of Mentimeters, like the poll, the quiz, the word cloud, a few of the other features, and any other things we did. Have students rank those, probably have a few open-ended survey questions as well. And it would be a nice way to get some open-ended data that'll complement those weekly assessments as well. And just for a visual representation of the semester and what this timeline looks like, so we talked about all of the implementation steps that I would be taking throughout 16 weeks. Again, this is the whole, let's say this, for example, the whole fall 2024 semester. My class is a 12-week class that starts here, right on week 5, and it runs through week 16. So the task analysis, the assessment design, again, the formative and summative, what do I want to measure specifically related to engagement? And then the Mentimeters I would be working on here, those would align with different content each week, right? So if we're talking about goals, I'm going to have to make a Mentimeter related to goals. If there's content related to learning theory, I'll have to make one related to that. And then, as noted, the 12-week course is going to run here. This is that first Mentimeter, just to sort of test the water as a proof of concept and make sure it works with the class. And then the remaining weeks, we would be doing another Mentimeter every week, and I'd be gathering that assessment data throughout each of those. And then again, here's the final course with our summative assessment measuring student satisfaction and attitudinal data, both closed and open-ended questions related to the different activities they did throughout the semester. So when creating this instructional design, I chose to use the ADDIE design model, right, which provided some grounding for the design itself, but it also provides a framework for where and when and how evaluation happens throughout the design as well as the implementation. So ADDIE is an acronym, right? It stands for Analyze, Design, Development, Implement, and Evaluation. Again, why is ADDIE appealing? Well, it's very easy to understand. It's really easy to use and implement. It's learner-centered, so again, this ties with some of the aspects of credit for prior learning. It ties in with constructivism, and it ties in with the theory of andragogy of adult learners, right? It's an iterative process, so there's a constant back and forth, and throughout that process, right, that allows for flexibility, redesign, or redirection based on feedback from each step of the. And just as another model, the previous screen that showed ADDIE from top to bottom. So iterative means there's regular loops throughout this process. So we analyze, and there's evaluation after that process, and then based on that, there might be revision. The design phase happens. There's also evaluation happening throughout. So design may be redesigned, or we may move to development. Throughout all of these steps, there's a continuous assessment that goes on between each one. So there's an appeal there, and at any point, you may determine that you need to go back and fix something, but it's probably a smaller fix because you're not redesigning from top to bottom. You know, it's again these smaller closed loops. Going back to the assessments, I talked about them previously when I showed the timeline slide and the implementation. But again, the majority of the assessments, the evaluations of the intervention are going to happen throughout the implementation stage, throughout the semester. And those are going to be the form of those formative assessments, right? Specifically the Mentimeter activities. Prior to that stage, though, when there's the analysis and design and development, there's evaluation going on. So if I determine, for example, I am going to need different Mentimeter activities because I've updated my course calendar and I'm going to include a new topic that I didn't include last year. I can go in and quickly reevaluate what tasks need to be completed and whip up a new Mentimeter content based on that specific updated course material. Or later, while I'm doing while we're doing these Mentimeter activities, for example, if certain ones are not getting the engagement that I would like, for example, let's say the poll is just not, students don't like it. I'm not getting high response rates. Maybe not even all the students are logging in to complete it. I can redesign it and try to use one of those other features. And because they're all template based, it's pretty easy to keep the content you have and just switch it to another model within Mentimeter. So I can change it to a word cloud, for example, or a quiz, or one of the other features. And then lastly, I talked about that summative assessment, and that's that final evaluation, which is going to happen at the last course, or the last class meeting, my apologies. One thing about teaching, and anyone that teaches probably knows that you do this all the time, whether we actively or consciously know we're doing it, we're regularly doing assessments and redirecting based on that. But with this instructional design plan, we want to be more intentional about when and where those happens, when and where those assessments happen, and kind of noting why a redirection was made based on an assessment, right? But assessing and maintaining engagement is going to be a continuous process throughout not only this first implementation of this, but throughout further iterations of the course in future semesters. But again, based on the data I get, right? So is Mentimeter impacting SLOs? Because content is going to be embedded in some of these, I'm going to be able to do some SLO assessment, even though that wasn't the original goal of this design intervention. But obviously, I'm going to get student feedback, and then I'm going to get that engagement data, which is the main thing I'm measuring. But based on those, I can revise or update content or sort of the format or modality of Mentimeter. I talked about this in the previous slide, but again, because those templates are there, I can change the format of a specific activity pretty quickly and easily. And again, I do not need any sort of support or approvals because this is free, or potentially I'll be paying for the paid version, but either way, it's browser based, so it's not going to take a massive overhaul to redesign one activity, for example. I mentioned the data access component. So again, there is a data dashboard where I can access a number of things, right? The specific responses from students, but the response rate, the response time, and a number of other features. So it's very interesting that Mentimeter captures all that and you can get to it. What I will say is the Pro version, which is the paid version for $11.99 a month, it allows you to download and export that data as I think a CSV Excel file. So you can do more with that data rather than just reviewing it on Mentimeter's website. So that's really appealing for a number of reasons, especially, for example, us as researchers in our instructional technology program at Northern Illinois University, right? Another reason for the $11.99, the monthly subscription, I will say in doing this presentation, I already started implementing some Mentimeter activities because why would I wait? Because it's such an interesting tool. So I've been incorporating it into some of my current classes, not every single section, and not with the level of data capturing that I have outlaid in this design plan here. I've also used it in a few presentations that were not for class, they were meetings I was in. So there's a number of reasons to use this tool. So because of that, I'm most likely subscribing very soon to the paid version at $11.99 a month. And if you were going to pay for an entire year, that'll come out to roughly $144 a year. Initially, I would take the cost on that. If there was an opportunity to get it paid for out of a departmental budget, or if I could persuade a larger license at the college that could get a number of users, because there's other versions where you can pay for a larger subscription base, I would do so. But for now, I'm fine incurring those costs. And then lastly, the Pro feature also, in addition to the data download and some of those data features, it incorporates unlimited users, the direct import of PowerPoint decks, more templates, and some other features. And with that, I would like to thank you for your time today, taking part in my presentation. I specifically want to thank you for learning about the course I developed, Interdisciplinary 105. I want to thank you for taking the time to learn a little bit more about credit for prior learning, if that's not something you're familiar with. And lastly, I would like to thank you for taking the time to learn about my specific intervention, right? How do we address decreased engagement in online courses, specifically synchronous online courses? For any of you that teach that way, I know you may express, or you may have dealt with some of the same challenges that I've dealt with. And lastly, I'd like you to thank you for the time for learning a little bit about Mentimeter. I know there are a bunch of these various engagement tools like Kahoot, Mural, and a few others. For me, I think this is a really interesting one for a number of reasons. And if you are interested in investigating this tool, just Google Mentimeter or go to mentimeter.com. And again, you can try it for free. And I hope this design plan provides you some structure for how you might go about developing your design plan and using Mentimeter. So again, thank you for your time.